All right, how about now? Can everybody hear me now? I don't think, for whatever reason, I don't think my live stream software was picking up the mic. All right, can you hear me now? I see Clark Herman in the stream. Are we all good now? Okay, great. Retro Kid, welcome, welcome. All right, looks like I'm back online. Great, wonderful. Okay, so apparently I've been rambling on mute for a few minutes. Yeah, welcome aboard, and it's time to talk some Wrestlemania. And there is a lot to talk about in regards to Wrestlemania. Two-night event. I also watched NXT Stand and Deliver. I also watched ROH Supercard of Honor 15. I watched Impact Wrestling Multiverse of Madness. And I watched the Hall of Fame as well. So there's a lot to go over here. But before I go into it, I guess I'll ask you all, what did you all think of WrestleMania? What's the general consensus? Because I mentioned a few minutes ago while I was on mute, I have not read any reviews. I have not seen any feedback, so I don't know what the reaction to the show has been, but I'm very curious to see what you all think. Anybody got an opinion on WrestleMania 13? A lot happened. I mean, there's a lot to talk about, I feel like. There's plenty to go over. Good show, main event sucked ass. Okay, that's one opinion. I enjoyed night one quite a bit, but night two drained me. Jesus, I felt that. I'm gonna go into my more elaborate feelings in a second, but I will say that I did definitely enjoy night one more than night two. That's for sure. I don't know, the two-night WrestleMania format, it was something that I was in favor of, mainly because they were cramming so much content into some of the recent WrestleManias, and the shows were just going way too long. Then I'm like, look, if you're going to do all of this shit at WrestleMania, just split it into two nights, so at least it's more manageable. And I think 2 4-hour shows is a lot better than one 7.5 or 8-hour show. So, I mean, I'll take the two-night format, but even with that, it's still like, man, it takes up the entire weekend. So, it's kind of 6 in one, half a dozen in the other. And, but yeah, generally, before I give my thoughts, let me say that I am back on Twitter. As I said in my last video, I am back on Twitter. I'm not, oh God, how do I feel? I don't feel great about having to go back to Twitter, but it's something that I'm doing mainly to begin promoting the upcoming book that I've written, Godzilla the Monster Fight Record. So that's my whole reason for having a Twitter. But I will use that Twitter to give my comments on wrestling shows moving forward. So if you want to contact me on Twitter, it's in the description down below. Also in the description below is the link to my other YouTube channel for the podcast that I do with Eric Clancy, the Weekday Warriors of Wrestling. And there's also, if you want to submit fan questions for future Q&A videos on that podcast, the email address is in the description as well. Just send your questions there. I am disappointed that I didn't see Iron Sheik finally make it down to the ring. I know, right? Let Bobby Heenan's prediction come true. ROH probably had the show of the weekend. I have my feelings on that. Definitely want to talk about the ROH show. I was surprised at how over Pat McAfee was. I knew he was liked, but my God. Yeah, that was, so I was not expecting that. It was like, is he a big deal in Texas or something? Or is this just a general thing? Pat McAfee is really, really liked. Probably the latter, because he didn't play for Dallas. That's one thing I did not appreciate at WrestleMania. It was seeing the Dallas Cowboy cheerleaders. It's like, boo! Never praise Dallas. Boo! They do have very cute, good-looking cheerleaders, though, I must say. And unlike my team, who has no cheerleaders, their team makes it to the playoffs. Mine is a bag of shit and has been for at least 5 or 6 seasons. So it's unfortunate, to say the least. But I will hate Dallas forever and a day. As long as I'm breathing, I will hate that team. But yeah, I've gotten the Twitter stuff out of the way. So When the cheerleaders came out opening night 1, the first thought that went through my mind was how pissed Patrick must have been. I was jokingly pissed. I started yelling boo at the television and things like that. So, yeah, that's for sure. I will say this, though. The set looked very nice. That was a very cool-looking Mania set with the big star and everything. Production-wise, I thought the set looked great. The singers of the national anthem were not great both nights. The first guy sounded like he was, and I forget their names, but the first guy sounded like he was on Valium or something. Like, he was, like, falling asleep in front of his microphone. And the girl for night 2, she sounded like she was in pain. So, national anthem, not too great. Yeah, I can't believe I've been... The first WrestleMania I reviewed on this channel was 27. I cannot believe it's been that long. The Patriots don't have cheerleaders either. They have Confederate soldiers that fire muskets after they score. It's an interesting pick there. Are you sure they're Confederates? That doesn't make much sense. Another thing I'll say about the production. This has been an issue with WWE for a long time, for at least a few years now. The CGI graphics that they superimpose for the wrestlers' entrances are so bad, and I wish they would drop them. I really do. I try to, like, go along with it, because it's like, all right, it's like when I was a kid, they would have the logos of the wrestlers up on the screen. Before the days of the Titantron videos, they would have the Undertaker's casket logo and Roddy Piper's red and yellow logo and everything. It's like, all right, I get what they're going for, but I still hate it. It still looks really... The Undertaker one looks so bad. The Roman Reigns one looks so bad. And the only ones that kind of look okay are Cody's, oddly enough, Steve Austin's, and Brock's was okay. But of the other ones, they just look horrible. They look like terrible, old video game graphics from, like, Generation 1 PlayStation. They just look terrible. I can't stand them. Oh, that's another thing I wanted to... Yeah, thanks for bringing that up, Joe. Stupendous. By the end of the 2 nights, I was like, if I hear the word stupendous one more time, I'm going to throw something at the screen. And that's a bizarre branding thing that Vince likes to do, where it's like, just repeat it over and over again, God damn it. Just keep saying it, God damn it. And to kind of get the point across, and I'm like, dude, just stop saying it. You sound moronic when you say it, please. I think my favorite WrestleMania set will always be 19. That one, the whole setup of that show just looked amazing. But yeah, 26 looked pretty good too. I don't remember 33s. That one escapes me. I don't remember that one too well. But yeah, let me get into the show itself. I'm going to pull up the card. And I guess I'll start, even though it happened last, I'm going to start with WrestleMania because that is the big show and I want to get my thoughts on it overall. I guess I'll start with the Hall of Fame. Let's start with the Hall of Fame first, just to get that out of the way. So as far as the class goes, definitely glad that the Steiner brothers and Vader got in. I'm a big mark for the Steiner brothers, big mark for Vader. The two of my favorite acts, being a WCW fan as a kid. And the Steiner brothers might be my favorite tag team in the history of wrestling. I just love those guys. So to see them get in was great. To see the Steiner brothers get an acceptance speech was nice. Scott told a fairly reserved for him story. Told a quick funny story, thanked his wife and kids, and of course, being Scott Steiner, I'm like, wait, he's got those? But yeah, that was nice. Sharmell was the one kind of like, really? She got in? But she gave a nice speech where she thanked everybody, and she even thanked the Nitro Girls, which was cool to see. I enjoyed that. And Shad Gaspard's segment was thankfully not overly emotional, and his family was lovely, and, the kid seems like he's doing okay, and so that was really good to see. And Vader, it was good to see his family, though it was weird that nobody inducted him. I thought Mick Foley was supposed to induct him. Of course, the real person who should have inducted him is Sting, and he's not available because he's in AEW. And then you got Undertaker, who Vince gave a really nice speech, I thought, overall, and then Taker got to go on and on for an hour, which, if anybody deserves to have a Hall of Fame speech that can go on for an hour, it's The Undertaker. And thanked a bunch of people, had a few emotional moments, especially in reference to Yokozuna and Crush. And his whole like 3 mental moves thing that he talked about, it's like, man, should he be a motivational speaker moving forward? Because, it's like, yeah, that was a good like little storytelling thing he was doing there. It's like, and it makes you feel good at the end. I wish I had seen that speech 15 years ago. I could have used that to help improve my life quicker. So I thought Taker did really well, and of course he teased coming out of retirement, never say never, and I was like, please don't, no. Undertaker, please don't. Please don't do it, don't do it. And he got to come out both nights to greet the crowd, which felt weird that he got to come out both nights. But then again, it's like, look, his final match was not in front of a crowd. His retirement ceremony was not in front of a crowd. Taker deserves to have this, as far as I'm concerned. So it's like, all right, fine, let Taker have it. And please, for the love of God, do not step in the ring ever again. Because I remember what Taker was like his last few years in the ring. It wasn't great. I stand by my assessment of all of his matches that I horribly bashed. The only one I would change is WrestleMania 30, because when I did the review of that match, I didn't realize that Undertaker was concussed, and that was what negatively impacted the match so much. But as far as him coming out of retirement now, it's like, for the love of God, please don't. Please don't. Just go out on a high note. You had a great speech. You're inducted into the Hall of Fame. Just go out on a high note. Let it be. For the love of God, just let it be. Did you hear Maven made a comeback this weekend? I did not. Not what show was he on? He wasn't on the shows I watched, but what show was he on? Safeco Field was probably the best looking venue. I'll agree to that. Yeah. I think Undertaker's speech was my favorite thing of the entire weekend. It was great. I thought the Hall of Fame show was great. That was a nice, feel-good, respectful show. Undertaker should have been the only one inducted this year, in my opinion. I would agree. If they were ever going to do it, Undertaker was the one to do it with. But with the ones they added, I'm not going to begrudge Steiner Brothers or Vader going in, because I love them so much. So it was gravy on top of the wonderful meal for me. It's like, oh, the Steiners go in and Vader goes in? Cool, great. And then Undertaker gets his big moment. So I was happy with it. But yeah, going into WrestleMania 38 itself, and I just pulled up the card, I will say this. Overall, it's probably the most I've enjoyed WrestleMania, at least since 30. There were plenty of things throughout both nights that I enjoyed, and I thought overall it was a pretty solid 2-night event for the most part. There was some stuff I absolutely hated, and I'm going to get into that, but I think generally I enjoyed the show quite a bit, and there was plenty of stuff to enjoy. So, again, it's the most I've enjoyed WrestleMania in the last few years. And I was actually pleasantly surprised by it, because I haven't been watching WWE, haven't watched Raw in God knows how long. I might watch Raw tomorrow night, just as a follow-up to this. And I haven't watched SmackDown in God knows how long. I honestly couldn't tell you when was the last time I watched either show. It's been that long. So I'm kind of coming into this with fresh eyes, and with, looking at the card and having so many celebrities featured and leaning so heavily on the old guard, shall we say, I was pleasantly surprised by the show. I thought overall it was a pretty good 2-night event that I overall enjoyed. I'd say whenever Vince McMahon passes and he's posthumously put in the Hall of Fame, he'll be the one that you can dedicate the entire show to. Probably. If you told me Scott Steiner was going to be in WWE in any capacity 5 years ago, I would have said you were nuts. Me too. Scott, I mean, I liked his speech and everything, but he looked a little off. Like, he was kind of twitching a little bit, so I wonder if he's okay, health-wise. I hope this isn't an Ultimate Warrior situation where, Scott dies, 2 nights after he goes into the Hall of Fame. Yeah. All right, so let's get into the card itself. We started off night 1 with the SmackDown Tag Team Championship, the Usos defending against Shinsuke Nakamura, and Rick Boogs, who I kind of won me over on this show. He's a goofy character, but I kind of like him. He's got this 80s strongman vibe to him, and he's just so silly. I kind of enjoy him. And I thought the Usos and the Nakamura and Boogs had a pretty solid, nice action-packed opener. It wasn't too good to kind of peak the show early, and it wasn't exceptionally bad or flat either. It was exactly what an opener should be. nice, solid, action-packed, start the show off hot. Usos retain, which was necessary, I think, to kind of keep Roman's faction going strong into the main event. But overall, I enjoyed the opener. Drew McIntyre versus Happy Corbin with Madcap Moss. It was a match. I didn't hate it, didn't love it. It was just kind of there. Not that interested in Baron Corbin or Happy Corbin or King Corbin or Sad Corbin or whatever the fuck his name is this week. He's been changed up and repackaged so many times that it's hard for me to even give a shit about him. And Drew McIntyre, he's one of these guys that's like, people tell me how great he is, and I just think he's okay. Like, I don't think he's exceptionally great, and that he should be a number one guy. Like, maybe I would put the world title on him if I was in a pinch and I needed to put the belt on somebody, but I don't see him as this exceptional talent or character. And the sword thing is stupid because it's like he chases people around with a sword, and it's like, dude, like, what are you going to do with your catch? Are you honestly going to chop somebody's head off? Like, it's just, I don't know. It's just two characters I'm not overly fond of having a match together, and what was overall, not great, but not bad either. It just filled time on the show, and I was like, all right, fine. And then he inexplicably, again, tried to murder Madcap Moss live on TV, and yeah, so there was that. It was a thing that happened. Drew went over, which I fully expected, and that was that. It was just, again, like I said, not good, not bad. It was just kind of there. Then we got the first of 3 celebrity matches. The Miz and Logan Paul defeating the father and son team of Rey Mysterio and Dominic Mysterio. I don't give a shit about Logan Paul, these internet celebrities. I don't care about him at all whatsoever. Presumably a bunch of people do. So I understand why they wanted to include him, and the match itself was fun. I enjoyed it, mainly for Rey Mysterio bouncing around. It's like, man, he still got it. And, like, he doesn't seem to slow down. He can still hit all of his spots and fly around and make a match fun to watch. And the Miz and Logan Paul were like good heels throughout the thing, so it made for a solid viewing experience, and you wanted to see the heels get beat up, and they did until they managed to steal a victory. So overall, the match was fun, but again, and this is going to be a recurring theme, especially when I go into night 2. You look at the 3 celebrity matches. This is one where the celebrity went over. So, moving right along from there, we had the first of the 2 women's title matches on night 1. I was surprised that both singles women's title matches were on night 1. But the first one was Bianca Belair defeating Becky Lynch to become the new Raw Women's Champion and avenging her loss from SummerSlam last year. I thought this match was pretty good. Not as good as Bianca and Sasha from the year before, but overall, pretty good match. And Bianca, got her win back and got to avenge the humiliating loss at SummerSlam, which they used to help tell their story in the early minutes. And overall, it was just a pretty good, solid match that with a satisfying conclusion with Bianca getting the big win. So overall, good stuff. Next up was my pick for match of the night and the best match from both nights of WrestleMania. Cody Rhodes being the mystery opponent to come back to the WWE and defeat Seth freaking Rollins in a wonderful match. I thought was very exciting and great. Cody's entrance was great because it's like they kept you strung along long enough to kind of make you go, is it him? Is it him? And then, of course, his theme song hit, which is great that they let him use his theme song that he's been using in ROH and New Japan and AEW. And Cody's back. Cody is back in WWE and had a terrific match with Seth. My one knock on it is that on his first night back, I would not have had his opponent kick out of all of his finishers. It's like, all right, he kicked out of the Cody Cutter, he kicked out of the Crossroads, and it kind of kills those finishers on the first night in, which is not a good idea. But other than that, I thought the match was great. It was, as far as WrestleMania is concerned, it was the match I enjoyed the most from both nights. And, of course, it was nice to see Cody whip out the bionic elbow and the flip-flop and fly, Dusty Rhodes stuff as part of the finish and working that in. Overall, it was, I thought it was a terrific match. That was the most enjoyable thing on WrestleMania for both nights, personally. And I'm legitimately intrigued to see how WWE is going to incorporate Cody into their storylines moving forward, because coming out of the show, he was one of the biggest stars by the time it was over. It's like, oh my God, Cody looks like one of the best. First night in, he already looks like one of the best guys in WWE. So it's like, how big is this push going to be? And what's he going to do tomorrow night on Raw? I'm legitimately intrigued, and I want to see it. And As far as him leaving AEW for WWE, it doesn't look good for AEW. I mentioned that a few videos ago. It's a bad look for them, but it reminds me of back in the Monday Night Wars days where guys would jump back and forth between both companies, and it was very exciting because you didn't know who was going to go over and who was going to stay, and it made for a fun viewing week to week. I was talking to somebody about it. It's like, I think Jeff Jarrett was in both companies twice during the course of the Monday Night Wars, if I'm not mistaken. He started off in WWF, then he went over to WCW to be in the Horsemen, then he left to go back to WWF, where he did his whole don't piss me off and putting women in the figure four thing, and then he went back to WCW and stayed there until it died. So it's like, Jarrett, he ping-ponged all over the place. But that added to the excitement of the time period, and I think Cody, after he was such a big star in AEW, even though the crowd turned on him, seeing him incorporated into WWE programming is like legitimately exciting and interesting, and I want to see what they do with him. It could flop moving forward. We don't know. I remember what happened with Taz when he made his debut with the company, but they had me hooked as far as Cody goes, and I want to see what they do with him. So, yeah, this was great. I thought all of this was wonderful, and I really enjoyed it. Next up was the one match on night one that I was not a fan of, and that's Charlotte Flair successfully defending the SmackDown Women's title against Ronda Rousey. Now, there were rumors breaking out during the day that Ronda had walked out on the show, and I don't know. Apparently, she was upset that she wasn't main eventing and upset that she was going to be losing to Charlotte. Whether or not that's true, I don't know. I have no idea, but regardless, I did not think the match was very good. I think both women, I don't know what it was, but they were just out of sync with each other on a few spots. They looked like there were some miscommunications between them, and it just was not a very fluid match, and didn't really do it for me. And then you did the whole finish thing where it looked like Ronda beat her twice, but she didn't really beat her, and the ref didn't see it, and I was like, all right, you can do that once, and it's fine, but when you start doing it 1, 2, 3 times, you start doing it more than once, it kind of becomes a clown show, and that's kind of how I felt about this. It kind of went from being a serious competition where you didn't really know who was going to win, and it turned into like kind of a farce by the end of it, and then Charlotte got the win in a kind of fluky BS fashion, and it was just kind of like, that one kind of fell flat for me. I don't know what it was, but I don't think the two women were on the same page together. Personal opinion, but that was one match I did not enjoy, but that brings us to the closing segment of the show, the KO show starring Stone Cold Steve Austin as the special guest. And that ultimately turned into a Kevin Owens versus Stone Cold Steve Austin match, a no-holds-barred match, Austin's first match in 19 years. Now, I will say this. I mean, you could say that Owens got chewed up and spat out and got made to look really bad here by the end of it, which is true. But if you're looking at it from a nostalgia standpoint, as far as presenting Stone Cold Steve Austin, the crowd ate it up, and it was exactly what people kind of wanted out of this. Austin was very limited. He was moving a lot slower than he had back in his prime. That much was clear. But I think Owens did a good enough job of covering up for that, and I think the no-holds-barred gimmick also allowed them to kind of hide some of Austin's weaknesses and limitations. And it was enjoyable for what it was, as like a satisfying return for Stone Cold Steve Austin and a showcase for him. I think the match worked in that regard. The only thing missing was JR yelling, "Stone Cold! Stone Cold! Stone Cold!" Other than that, I thought it was a lot of fun to watch. Again, you could say that Owens got buried, which he kind of did, but I also feel like they've also squandered Kevin Owens long before this, and it's like he was never going to be a top star anyway, because of how poorly he'd been presented. So I'm sure getting to take a Stone Cold Stunner from Stone Cold Steve Austin, and also hit a Stone Cold Stunner on Stone Cold Steve Austin, was very exciting for him, and I'm sure he enjoyed the challenge of getting to work Steve Austin's final match with him. So yeah, I thought it was really enjoyable and fun, and like a nice send-off for Stone Cold Steve Austin, and I wish they had left it at that. More on that when I get into the night too. But if you wanted to see Stone Cold Steve Austin, the show gave you Stone Cold Steve Austin. And there were enough bells and whistles to kind of make the entire thing work. And it was fun, even though Austin is obviously limited. If I had to compare it to anything, it kind of reminded me of that one TNA Bound for Glory where Hogan had the match with Sting, and Hogan like literally couldn't do anything because his back was shot, but he got a face turn at the end. And he got to Hulk up and rip his shirt off, and by the end, everybody was going nuts. So it's like, all right, you gave the people what they wanted, and it worked in that regard. But overall, I thought it was, like I said, I thought it was fun for what it was, and I thought it was a nice closer to night 2. And the crowd, the Dallas crowd, obviously ate it up. So, yeah, Stone Cold Steve Austin got to have his first match in 19 years, and the crowd was very satisfied with it. And I was too. All right, let me get caught up on the comments here. Okay. All right. Reportedly, Nakamura and Boogs was supposed to win. I didn't know that. That's interesting. So the injury was legit. It felt legit. God, I didn't realize that. Okay. It was interesting because when it happened, I was like, is he selling? But it looked like it played into the finish. It kind of reminded me of SummerSlam 1990, The Rockers versus Power and Glory, where Shawn was legit hurt going in, and they worked the match that way specifically to kind of put Power and Glory over. But no, I wasn't aware of it. Gable Stevenson, yeah, I'll talk about Gable Stevenson. He had a big moment in night 2. Stephanie McMahon introduced him during night 1. Yeah, it seems like they have big plans for him. I mean, it's their second Olympic gold medalist. So, yeah, we'll see how he does. I don't think he has a very strong stage presence, at least not yet. He just kind of looks like a guy. But he's still green and he's still learning. So we'll see if he's able to develop into something more special down the road. If I were booking 39, my main event would be Drew McIntyre versus Roman Reigns. I'm like, nah, I'm okay. I never watch YouTube channels like him. These YouTube celebrities are jokes. I mean, I agree with you saying this as somebody who posts videos on YouTube. So, okay. I think Cody should be the one that beats Roman at SummerSlam. They could build to Cody and Roman. I'd be down for that. It would have been more epic if the internet didn't exist. I know, it would have been nice if Cody's return wasn't spoiled. Yeah, I mean, Cody's got a lot of momentum coming out of this weekend, so they've got to use him right. Ronda later refuted the claim, saying that she'd been taking care of her 6-month-old baby. That's probably more believable, but who knows? Yeah. I mean, you know, her taking care of her infant child probably makes a little bit more sense. I think Belair Lynch should have been higher on the card. Well, Stone Cold had to close, because that was clearly the thing that most people were invested in. And I think they probably figured that Ronda was the bigger star to kind of put higher up. So, you know, third down on the card isn't bad. Crowd was hot that whole week. They were. I mean, they were red hot for a bunch of stuff. Even stuff that most other towns probably would have shat on. But, you know, we'll see. At least it was better than Austin versus Bischoff from 2003. Well, that was just a total squash match. That was, but, you know, you expect Bischoff to get squashed. Austin did better than I expected. I near shit myself when he was suplexed on the concrete. Yeah, that was kind of a scary bump because, you know, Austin's one of those guys that's like, be careful, be careful, be careful. His neck. So that was kind of a scary spot, but he took it to his credit. All right. So that's enough of night 1. Let's jump into night 2, which also opened with a tag team championship match. WWE has too many belts. Just throwing that out there. RK Bros successfully defending the Raw Tag Team Championship in a triple threat tag team match against the Street Profits and Alpha Academy. Now, normally, and this is going to be a recurring theme throughout my show reviews throughout the weekend, I don't care about 4-corner, 3-corner, you know, triple threat tag matches. It's just bodies flying all over the place, and I can't tell who anybody is, and it's boring, and it's just spot after spot after spot, and I don't care. This one worked, and I'll explain why it worked. The 3 teams had their own distinct, unique identities. You have Otis, who's like the big, thick motherfucker who can't be moved. You have Orton and Riddle, who are like the athletic types that hit the RKOs out of nowhere, and they did that, and it was really cool and fun to see. And you have the Street Profits, who look vastly different and are more of the high-flying types compared to the other three teams. So, this match, I felt like the individual teams got to shine a lot more, whereas the other four-ways and three-way tags that happened throughout the weekend, it was just bodies flying all over the place, and I couldn't tell who was who, and nobody stood out to me as a result. But here, Matt Riddle stood out, Randy Orton stood out, Otis stood out, and it was a very exciting opening match. I really enjoyed it, and then they did the bit afterwards with Gable Stevenson giving him a little bit of shine, like throwing around Chad Gable, which I'm sure somebody backstage thought that was funny. It's like, let's have first name Gable throw around last name Gable. It'll be funny, and I'm sure that's what they were doing. But I forgot to mention. I completely forgot to mention the show actually opened up with Triple H welcoming everybody to WrestleMania and leaving his boots in the ring. The reason I forgot it is that my Peacock feed cut out during the show, so I didn't get to see it. So I actually went online and saw the full clip so I could get to see it. So again, it was a nice farewell for Triple H, a nice moment. I already paid my respects to him when he announced his retirement, and it was good that he got this moment. I'm sure he'll go into the Hall of Fame next year. He'll be top of that class without a doubt, for sure. But yeah, it was a nice opener to the show, I felt. So you got a nice moment to open up the show, and you got a nice match to open up the show. So good stuff all around so far. Next up was another match I enjoyed. I can imagine a lot of people online didn't like this match, but I liked it. Bobby Lashley versus Omos, and here's why I liked it. A lot of the matches I'm going to criticize from this weekend are the ones where it's just spot after spot after spot, and it's just people, again, I kind of talked about it with the opener, but it's just bodies flying all over the place, and there's no, like, logic or characters on display or anything. It's just bodies flying all over the place. What I liked about this match is that it wasn't complicated. It was two guys who are stylistically and physically different from each other. You've got Lashley, who is strong as fuck and looks like a He-Man character, He-Man action figure come to life. And you have Omos, who looks like a giant out of a fairy tale, and he's just tall as fuck. So it's like, all right, can this strong as fuck guy toss around this big as fuck guy? And they worked the entire match around that, and they did that and told that story so effectively that a vertical suplex was the high spot of the match, and it worked. And I was like, that's why I like this stuff. The simple stuff usually works best. Lashley got the win with a couple of spears and showed that his superior athleticism and his strength could outdo Omos' size. I thought that this came off really well, and I thought it was a nice, solid match to have on the show, so I really enjoyed it. And next up from there, we had the second of our three celebrity matches, Johnny Knoxville of Jackass fame defeating Sami Zayn in an anything goes match. Why they didn't call it no DQ or no holds barred, I don't know. But in any case, it was Johnny Knoxville defeating Sami Zayn. Now, I don't think this match was a disaster by any means. The crowd obviously ate it up. And if you're a Jackass fan, I'm sure it was very entertaining. People popped for Wee Man. If you like Jackass, I'm sure you probably enjoyed this. I am in a very small minority. I've never liked Jackass. I don't understand Jackass. To me, it's just a bunch of idiots acting like idiots. I don't get it. I didn't get it when I was a teenager. I don't get it now. It's one of those things where it's like, I'm in the minority, and I fully admit that. I don't see the appeal in Jackass. So this match didn't really do it for me. But if you like Jackass, I'm sure you enjoyed the hell out of this. As far as Johnny Knoxville getting a pin over Sami Zayn, I'm going to talk more about it when I get into the Pat McAfee match. But, it's another case of a celebrity going over a seasoned wrestler. But like I said about Kevin Owens, Sami Zayn's another guy I feel like they've kind of squandered, and any chance of him becoming bigger than he currently is are probably gone now. So him getting pinned by a giant mousetrap, I don't know, this is probably good for him. And gives him a better standing than he would have been otherwise. Who knows? I don't know. But yeah, so this match wasn't my cup of tea, mainly because I don't care about the people involved. But I'm sure that if you do care about the people involved, I'm sure you really enjoyed this. And the crowd seemed to eat it up, so who am I to judge? Next is a 4-way tag match for the Women's Tag Team Championships. Sasha Banks, who had a cool entrance. Sasha Banks and Naomi winning over Queen Zelina and Carmella, who were the champions. Rhea Ripley and Liv Morgan, and Natalya and Shayna Baszler. Now, this is an example of the type of match that I was talking about earlier, where all 8 women went out there and did a bunch of spots, and none of their characters got over for me. Like, I couldn't even tell who was doing what spots half the time. When they did the double Tower of Doom spot, it looked cool, but if you asked me who was on top of the tower and who was at the bottom of the tower, I couldn't tell you, because it was just a bunch of bodies flying around, and I didn't even... And after a few minutes of it, I just kind of zoned out and stopped caring. So this was an example of like kind of the bad filler type of multi-person match that I'm going to be talking more about as I dive into the other reviews for NXT, ROH, and Impact. It had action. It filled time. I wasn't offended by it, but I didn't care about it either. So, Sasha Banks and Naomi won the belts, which may have been the best option. I don't know. But these teams felt randomly thrown together to me. Again, I haven't been watching WWE programming, so maybe they're not that random, but they feel random based on this. But, the match, it was filler. It was what it was. And then we had what I think many anticipated would be the match of the night for night 2, and it kind of was. Edge versus AJ Styles. This match was very good. It was missing something. I don't know exactly what it was missing, but it was missing something to kind of push it up to being like a WrestleMania classic or like a match of the year contender or something along those lines. But overall, I thought the match itself was very, very good. It was cool to see Edge and AJ Styles mixed together. It's one of those interesting match pairings that you don't think about. But when you pitch it to me, I'm like, yeah, that would be a pretty cool match. And it lived up to that kind of the mystique surrounding that type of pairing. So yeah, I really enjoyed it. I thought both men looked great. I thought the finish, minus the distraction element with Damian Priest, I thought the finish with Edge spearing AJ out of thin air out of the phenomenal forearm, I thought was really cool, and overall like a great visual. It looked even better in slow motion when they showed the replay, and that looked great. And is Edge going to be forming his own version of the Brood with Damian Priest? I don't know. It's a little hanging story thread heading into Monday Night Raw or SmackDown, whichever show they're on. I don't even know what shows these people are on anymore, but we'll see. I'm intrigued, and I thought the match was very good. So, yay, Edge and AJ. They did it. Had a good match. And then from there, we had a pointless filler match with the New Day getting utterly demolished by the Peaky Blinders, or whatever this group that Sheamus has going with his friend Butch, formerly Pete Dunne. Who is naming these people? I swear to God, and that's going to be a recurring theme on this, because some of these names are just terrible. It's like, why is Pete Dunne, a guy who's already been on WWE television, renamed Butch? I don't understand it. It makes no sense. But this was just pointless filler. I just wanted to rant about the names. And Sheamus, who they will never give up on that guy. They will always have something for him. He's been there for like, what, 14 years, 13 years, something like that, and he still finds a spot. The Intercontinental Champion and the U.S. Champion can't find a spot at WrestleMania, but god damn it, they'll get Sheamus on there. And I don't know if his group has a name, but I'm calling them the Peaky Blinders, because that's what they remind me of. Then from there, we got this whole situation. Okay, I gotta talk about this. Pat McAfee versus Austin Theory was what the match was supposed to be, and had they left it at that, I probably would have been okay with it. The crowd was really into McAfee, and he went over. What was overall a pretty solid match. I think Austin Theory is boring as hell, so I don't see much potential in him, and Pat McAfee, at least cares, and looked pretty good in the process. So I was like, all right, I'll let it go. But what I will say in regards to Austin Theory is that I heard, I think it was Nick Khan said the other day that the WWE has trouble creating new stars. And I was like, okay, here's why you have trouble creating new stars. And again, it's Austin Theory. It's a guy I don't see a whole heck of a lot in. I think he's probably a really good athlete. I've seen him a couple of times on the indies. But he's just got a bland look, and I just don't see anything in him. Maybe I'm wrong. I don't know. But whether I'm wrong or not is immaterial, because it's like, all right, you have a guy that Vince McMahon has handpicked as his chosen one, and said on the mic, this guy will be a future Universal Champion. So this is WrestleMania, a big spot for him. He's working with Pat McAfee. Big spot for him. Vince McMahon in his corner. Big spot for him. So this is your chance to make something out of him. You start out by having him lose clean to an NFL punter and commentator. Then you have that commentator go into a match against a 75-year-old man in Vince McMahon, lose to Vince McMahon, and then Austin Theory gets Stone Cold stunnered by Austin for his trouble. So, you really had 4 people in the segment. You had Pat McAfee, you had Vince McMahon, and you had Stone Cold Steve Austin, and you had Austin Theory. Theory is number 4 on that list, on the totem pole, and got made to look even worse in the process. So it's like, you had a chance to make something out of this guy, and instead you just had him get his ass kicked by basically get made to look like a fool by all 3 other people in the segment. And, oh my God, okay, so when Pat McAfee went over and then he challenged Vince to a match and they did that, this was so bad. It was, because Vince looks old as fuck. Couldn't really do much in the way of bumping, which I'll elaborate on it a little bit. And then proceeded to lose to a 75-year-old man after he was flipping all over the place and beat the crap out of a much younger, faster guy. It looked so bad. It was embarrassing. It was one of the saddest thing, easily the worst thing of the entire weekend. And if that wasn't bad enough, Stone Cold Steve Austin comes out to recreate the Austin McMahon feud, because we got to get one last Austin McMahon stunner in there. It's like, man, remember when this was the best part of the show? Now it's the saddest part of the show, because that stunner was flipping awful, because Vince looked like he was selling it before he even took the stunner, and he mistimed it horribly, because he's a 75-year-old man and probably shouldn't be in there doing anything physical. And, worst stunners of all time. You've got this one, the one that Linda McMahon took on the Raw Homecoming show in 2005, and the one that Donald Trump took at WrestleMania 23. Which one is the worst? I'll let you decide. Maybe, I don't know. I was just checking something. Okay. All right. But in any case, the stunner looked awful. The segment was awful. It dragged on forever. And it started off with, like, had they left it at just Pat McAfee and Austin Theory, okay, I would have accepted it. But then it just dragged on and on and on. And by the end of it, I was just done. And it was just depressing. For as cool as it was to see Austin in night 1, this just depressed me, because it went right back to predictable Stone Cold Steve Austin, because night 1 he was swearing, he was being something that resembled the Austin of old, and here he was just like, he was that predictable, I'm gonna arrive, drink a beer, hit a stunner Austin that he had been for years and years and years, that I got sick of, quite honestly. And this whole segment was just awful. It was just absolutely awful, and worst part of all of WrestleMania by far. I couldn't stand it. And then that leads us into the main event. Roman Reigns versus Brock Lesnar, with both championships, the WWE title and the Universal title, on the line. And this was the battle to unify both belts. And I gotta say, this is the first time I saw some of this footage in the hype video package leading into this. This is the first time I had seen some of this footage with Brock, and it's like, man, Cowboy Brock is pretty cool. I kind of like Cowboy Brock, I'm not going to lie. And Roman, I think, is doing great as a heel, so this is probably the most exciting Roman and Brock pairing that we've ever seen. For a pairing that's been done to fucking death, 3rd time main eventing WrestleMania, this is the most interesting it's ever been. So I'm like, all right, credit for taking a dead feud and injecting some significant life into it. I was like, okay, I'm kind of feeling this. It's got the big fight feel. I thought the introductions were great. Brock doing his own introduction, Heyman style, I thought was pretty cool. And it's nice to see Brock showing a lot more personality outside of being the silent killer that he'd been for years. And as a result, I think that big match feel translated and made the main event feel bigger than it would have otherwise. The match itself was largely just kind of what you expect out of these two. They're going to hit their haymakers, they're going to hit their finishers, and that's going to be most of the match. It's just going to be them hitting big moves to each other. What made this one different and helped it to stand out a little bit and made it a little bit more exciting is that Roman was definitely the heel, and Brock had to overcome some of his cheating tactics, like the low blow and the belt shots and things like that. And so you did have a clear-cut heel in this situation. I think Roman does much better as a heel. than he ever did as a face. I did think the counter of the spear into the Kimura lock was really cool. But Roman got the win with one last spear, and that was how they closed WrestleMania. Roman Reigns retains and continues his record-setting reign as Universal Champion. So how much longer will it go? I don't know, but this is probably the most I've enjoyed Lesnar and Brock. Now, don't ever do it again. We're fine. We're all fine here. But I think I'm trying to think of who they could have Roman work with moving forward. And before Brock came back, that was kind of the issue. It's like, all right, well, if not Brock, then, who's he going to work with? And now that he's beaten Brock, it's like, okay, I guess Cody? Cody coming out of WrestleMania, Cody's kind of the big one. I mean, anybody who says Stone Cold Steve Austin, please get the fuck out of here. It's like, no, do not do that match. For the love of God, do not do that match. But yeah, we'll see. I guess there's talk of them doing The Rock at WrestleMania 39, but we'll see how that goes. I do think, however, that there is, and this, I'll take it back to Austin and Kevin Owens and, what I just said about Austin Theory. It is interesting how the perception of the modern day stars has changed significantly, where in 1998 or 99, like Austin would have never lost a match to Bruno Sammartino, even if that was like a possibility. Like they would have never had Austin lose to Sammartino. That would have been stupid. It would have been, you would never have Austin lose to an old man. And yet here we've got Austin working with the modern star and Kevin Owens, and it's like you feel like Austin could beat the ever-living shit out of him. And it's that weird perception where the old guys feel way tougher and way more badass than the young guy, or younger guys in Owens' case. But it's such a strange perception. I don't know if that's WWE's booking or it's just the look of the guys and the guys today being smaller. I don't know what it is, but it's very interesting. But they're doing things today with the younger guys that you would have never seen with the modern stars of like the 90s and the 80s. It just wouldn't have happened. Okay, let me get caught up on the comments here. Okay. For a third match on the card, it had a lot of sizzle to the steak, as JR would have said, yeah. Triple H was my favorite when I was a kid. It's sad seeing him go. I was really hoping for a Cody Triple H match. Story just writes itself. Yeah, especially after Cody's run in AEW, it absolutely writes itself. Edge's entrance was badass. I agree. A lot of the entrances were really cool on this show, honestly. Vince McMahon finally has a win at WrestleMania. He does! This is his first Mania win. Good for you, Vince. I think it's a record for oldest match performer in WrestleMania history. I think it's got to be, right? I mean, who else would even be... Even in the gimmick battle royal, like, I think Vince is older than all of those guys were when they did that match. And oldest winner. Yeah, I think so. B-Slim, welcome aboard. Nah, man, Vince was just giving fans nostalgia for the first time he took the stunner in 97. Well, yeah, I mean, that's clearly why they did it, but it was still not a very sloppy-looking spot. In all seriousness, the segment with Theory, McAfee, Vince, and Austin sucked the life out of me. I wanted to drink to death during that. It was the one thing on WrestleMania, overall, it was the one thing where WWE's worser tendencies kind of overtook the show and really kind of drove it into the dirt. It started off fine, and then it just drove itself into the dirt. And, it was not great. It was not great. Not my favorite, unfortunately. So that didn't work. But generally speaking, I enjoyed most of WrestleMania 38. And to its credit, there are a lot of things to talk about coming out of this WrestleMania. So it's one of the more memorable WrestleManias in the last few years. I made the comment when I started. It's probably the most I've enjoyed WrestleMania, at least since 30. Because you look at 30 was a really good show. With the end of the streak, Daniel Bryan's big night, and general, promoting of solid young talents like The Shield and Cesaro. Boy, that feels like it was an eternity ago. And Bray Wyatt, well, he lost to Cena. But generally, WrestleMania 30 was a very good show. And then you got 31, which had some good matches, but the Sting thing kind of pissed me off. And, a couple missteps there. 32 was a disaster. 33 had a bunch of shit on there, even though I really liked the Goldberg-Lesnar match and AJ and Shane. 34 was way too long and had a terrible main event. 35, way too fucking long. That was like the pinnacle of like overly long WrestleManias. 36, COVID happened, so there was that. And 37 was good, but not a lot of it was very memorable. So this is the most I've enjoyed WrestleMania in quite a few years. So I'll give it that. And guess what? I'm tuning into Raw tomorrow night. I was like, all right, WWE, you got me. I want to tune in to see Cody. I want to tune in to see what they do with Reigns and Edge. So it's like, all right, you got me. I'm tuning into Raw tomorrow night to see what happens. Could they at least had Theory hit him with a finisher and then Vince pins him? Not even that. Yeah, I know. That would have been better than having McAfee sell for a 75-year-old man. That was embarrassing. It looked so bad. Oh my God, that looked terrible. But, okay, so that was WrestleMania. A lot of things to say about it. But now that we've moved past that, let's talk about the other shows I watched this weekend. I guess I'll start with NXT Stand and Deliver. This is the first NXT show I have watched since the first episode of the relaunch. So it's been a while since I've watched NXT, and I'm comparing it to when I saw the very first TakeOver. That was the first time I watched any NXT at all. And that was kind of my exposure to the brand. And by the time that show was done, I was like, wow, Charlotte really won me over. And Tyler Breeze really won me over. And they've got all these good characters. And I think there's a lot of potential here to make for a really fun show. And I became an NXT fan after that. It's like they got me, fresh fan with no expectations. And they drew me into the brand. I became an NXT fan. I watched all the takeovers. And then, of course, I had to go to Wednesday nights and try to compete with AEW, and completely destroyed everything that made NXT appealing in the first place. But here we go again. It's like, all right, I'm coming in with fresh eyes. I'm going to see what I'm in for and see if anybody wins me over, if there's anything of intrigue coming out of the show. And I'm sorry, I'm getting caught up. I wanted a Haas fight for the main event. I feel like we got a Haas fight for the main event. I feel like that's what it was. And I'm watching Terminator 2 while watching your stream. That's a good movie. It's a great movie. One of my personal favorites. But in regards to NXT Stand and Deliver, I am sorry to report this show did not grab me at all. This felt like a high-class indie show with a bunch of people doing spots. And you've got 6 matches on the show, and 3 of them were multi-person spot fests where almost nobody stood out. And I was... it was a lot of doing spots to distract people from the fact that a lot of the characters themselves are not that interesting. And I was not as interested in NXT coming out of the show as I was coming out of the first TakeOver those years ago. There was a women's tag title match on the pre-show. I didn't see it. I caught like the tail end of it. This Toxic Attraction group is kind of interesting, especially for Mandy Rose. I'll talk about that when I talk about the women's title match. And Gigi Dolan's pretty cute, but other than that, nothing really grabbed me there. And then they opened up with a 5-way ladder match for the North American title. Cameron Grimes winning the North American title from Carmelo Hayes, who I'd never seen before, Santos Escobar, who I have seen before, Solo Sikoa, who I'd never seen before, and Grayson Waller, who I'd never seen before. This is a perfect example of just doing a bunch of spots and nobody standing out. Honestly, I'll be honest, the corner people actually had more memorable spots than the people who were active participants in the match. Like, who's the biggest fuck guy? Raul Mendoza? I think he was, and Elektra Lopez got to bounce around, or Senga, I think, was the big guy, right? Was Senga the big guy who ripped the ladder apart? He stood out more than any of the active participants, and Elektra Lopez getting a big spot was more noteworthy than anything any of the active participants did. Santos Escobar did have a scary spot at one point, and that one dive out of the ring, I think it was Grayson Waller. Again, I lost track of who people were most of the time, but his fall that broke through the ladders was actually extremely scary. But at the end of the day, I felt like this match was just a bunch of people doing spots, and the spots were more important than trying to win. And by the time it was over, I didn't really get a better grasp of who anybody was or what was going on or anything. It was just a bunch of people doing spots. And that was, action-packed, and it was, fun to watch in that regard. But I completely forgot what anybody's role was in this match, except for Cameron Grimes winning. I completely forgot what anybody was doing in this thing. Then you got Tommaso Ciampa versus Tony D'Angelo, a match where it felt like Tommaso Ciampa was doing all the work, having a match around a thoroughly uninteresting guy in Tony D'Angelo. If he's been a big star in NXT 2.0, I don't know, but he left no impression on me whatsoever in this match. And he went over Tommaso Ciampa when it was over, so the whole thing was designed to kind of put him over. And I can't recall anything interesting that he did the entire match. It was all Ciampa having the match around him, honestly. And Ciampa did a bit at the end that made it look like he was leaving. I don't know if he's leaving WWE or just leaving NXT and moving to Raw or SmackDown. Who knows? I guess we'll find out. I don't know for sure personally, but he got to have his farewell with Triple H. And, you know, Tommaso Ciampa is one of the guys from the old NXT that I really enjoyed and I was a big fan of. And if you're trying to tell me that Tommaso Ciampa is leaving NXT, that's not a good way to get me to come back and watch on Tuesday nights. It's like, all right, so one of the few guys I was still interested in, you're telling me is leaving the show. And it's like, it's not great. It's not great. But anyway, moving right along, we've got another multi-person tag title match. MSK winning the tag titles from Imperium and the Creed brothers. MSK I've never seen before. Imperium I have seen a couple of times, and the Creed brothers I'd never seen before. This is another match where it's like it was just a bunch of guys doing spots, and I could not tell you with 100% certainty who did what in this match because everybody just kind of blended together, and it was just a bunch of people doing spots. Nobody stood out. Nothing was interesting. I can't recall anything that one specific person did in this entire match, and the complete opposite of the opening tag match from night 2 of WrestleMania, where, yeah, same situation. It's a triple threat tag match, but the guys, the individuals, actually stood out in the process, so I was okay with it. And I'm looking at the times here. It looked like they got about the same amount of time, so it wasn't a timing issue either. And just this one looked like an interesting tag match with interesting characters, and this one looked like an indie tag match with just a bunch of people doing spots. And until I read the results here, I completely forgot that MSK even won the belts. I couldn't remember who won. That's how uninteresting this match was. And that's how little impact it had on me. And as multi-person matches weren't uninteresting enough, we get another one, a fatal 4-way for the NXT Women's title. Mandy Rose successfully defending her title against Cora Jade, who I'd never seen before, but she looks like she's imitating the Dynamic Dudes, and I immediately zoned out from her. It's like, oh, don't do the skateboarding thing. Oh, no, not that Dynamic Dudes. Anything but the Dynamic Dudes. Kaylee Ray, who's like secondhand Becky Lynch, and Io Shirai, who I can't believe is still there. And again, the match itself just kind of felt like a bunch of people doing spots. Shirai did a crazy spot at one point. I think Kylie Ray did a crazy spot at one point. But the only one who came out of this looking like somewhat of a star is Mandy Rhodes. Now, she's not doing anything groundbreaking. She's playing the hot bitch champion, which is, again, not groundbreaking or anything. But it's different, and she's kind of standing out as a character, and she's got her own stable with Toxic Attraction, and I'm like, okay, it's something. I mean, this is the most I've ever enjoyed Mandy Rose, and it's the biggest impression she's ever left on me, so I'll give her that. The move back to NXT has been good for her. Apparently, she's been able to develop to some degree into something, and she's also very easy on the eyes, which is always a plus, but the match itself was thoroughly uninteresting to me, because again, it was just a bunch of people doing spots. And that's, I zoned out after a while. Then we finally get a singles match again. It's because it felt like, and here's the thing, like the 4-way and the 3-way tag weren't that long, but it felt like it was an eternity until we got a singles match. We got LA Knight, the former Eli Drake, going up against Gunther, the former Walter. Who is naming these people? Jesus Christ. And it's a shame because I like both guys, but I don't know. Like, something about this match just felt flat to me. I don't know if it's the way they've been utilized and they just weren't that interesting. I don't know. LA Knight seemed to have the crowd on his side doing some of his shtick, but again, Eli Drake is a much better name. Walter is a much better name. And I didn't come out of this match more interested in two guys that I already have like positive impression of. And yeah, I just thought this match was fine, I guess, but it wasn't overly interesting. Gunther got the win. I hate that name. It's so bad. So bad. But the match itself was just kind of there. And then we got Dolph Ziggler with Robert Roode successfully defending the NXT title against Braun Breaker. I mean, this is another battle of the two guys who are cursed with bad names. Ziggler from way back when he was cursed with a stupid name, and then Braun Breaker, who already has a cool name in Rex Steiner lined up for him, and they won't use it. They insist on calling him something stupid. So I thought his entrance was pretty cool with the chainsaw and everything, but Braun Breaker is an athletic specimen that has elements of his dad. He's got elements of his uncle. And he kind of looks like Nikita Koloff if Nikita Koloff could work like Kurt Angle. He's a very unique specimen with a great look and great athletic ability. And so I don't think it was a very good move to have him lose here. Again, it's WrestleMania weekend. You got to imagine NXT doesn't have the largest audience anymore, but more eyeballs are going to be on this show because it's WrestleMania weekend. Show off this kid, have him get a big win, and let him be a headline coming out of WrestleMania, but instead they kept the belt on Ziggler, which kind of ended the show on a flat note, to me anyway. And the commentary pissed me off because Braun Breaker, the nephew of Scott Steiner, the inventor of the Frankensteiner, did a top rope Frankensteiner, and they did not call it a Frankensteiner on commentary. I was so angry. I was like, because I popped. It was the biggest pop I had during the match, where the nephew of Scott Steiner broke out a Frankensteiner. I just popped like crazy for it. And the commentators completely missed it either on purpose or because they didn't know. And either way, it's inexcusable. It pissed me off. The match itself kind of started slow and then picked up towards the end. I don't understand the point of doing the whole referee kicks out Robert Roode bit only to have Robert Roode come back and play an impact in the finish anyway. Kind of made that whole spot pointless. But in any case, I wasn't a fan of Ziggler winning. And it kind of ended the show on a flat note, at least for me. I think Braun Breaker is a hell of a talent that should be cultivated and made to look really good. And I think they had a chance to showcase him in a great way on WrestleMania weekend. They didn't take it, so that was unfortunate. So, yeah, NXT Stand and Deliver was, to me, a fairly, not a terrible show by any means, but a fairly forgettable one that did not make me want to tune into NXT. Compare that to WrestleMania, where at the very least you had Cody, you had Edge, potentially forming a new stable after having a really good match with AJ Styles. And you have Roman Reigns continuing his reign after defeating his greatest rival in Brock Lesnar, finally at WrestleMania defeating Brock Lesnar. So there's some stuff that's intriguing to me coming out of WrestleMania, whereas NXT, there was virtually nothing. The only thing coming out of NXT, I guess, is Mandy Rose. Honestly, she was the only thing that left a positive impression on me because the one male star I was really, really interested in is Braun Breaker, and they had him lose. So it's like, all right, well, that's the end of that, I guess. Here we go. That's NXT. So I will not be checking out NXT in the near future. That one did not grab me, unfortunately. All right, let me get caught up on comments here. Jackass 3D was screened at the Museum of Modern Art. Of course it was. All right. Steiner's nephew has no business being as good as he is early on. It's like, well, hey, he's got the genetics. He's a genetic freak. I wish Braun Breaker would use the Steiner screwdriver as a finisher. Oh, I would pop so hard for that. Oh, my God, if he broke that out. Yeah, I mean, who knows if he can do it. That's the thing. I don't know. But I still think Braun Breaker should have gone over. And he should be named Rex Steiner. These names are so terrible. And I'm not done with the bit. We're out of WWE now, but I don't think the names are terrible. So, all right. I'm going to take a quick break. I'll be right back. Give me about, let's say 5 minutes. I'll be back. Going to get some more water, and I will be back. So intermission time. Stay tuned. I'll be back for some more. All right, I'm back. How's everybody doing? You all miss me? I think that was quicker than 5 minutes. Hey, you know what? I'm going to have some fun. I'm going to put a poll in the chat. Okay, put this in. All right, who took the worst Stone Cold Stunner? Donald Trump at WrestleMania 23, Linda McMahon at Raw Homecoming, or Vince McMahon tonight? So you can enjoy that. I will get an answer to the poll in a few minutes. But let's jump into the non-WWE shows that I watched this weekend. There were 2 of them. First one was Supercard of Honor 15, the return of Ring of Honor, now that it's under the ownership of AEW owner Tony Khan. And my overall impression, I thought overall it felt like an ROH show. It was generally pretty exciting, and I enjoyed most of the matches. So overall, it was, I thought a really good wrestling show overall. There were a few things I wasn't overly fond of. But for the most part, I really enjoyed Supercard of Honor, and it had my favorite match of the entire weekend. More than Cody and Seth, more than Austin and Owens, this show had my favorite match of the weekend by a pretty wide margin. Better than Edge and AJ, but it definitely had that going for it. There were a bunch of matches on the pre-show. I missed the pre-show because I was kind of dozing off. But I saw that Colt Cabana beat Blake Christian, who also showed up in the Ultimate X match. I thought he wasn't he in the Ultimate X match, or am I guess I was wrong. Was he? Yeah, wasn't he the replacement for Willie Mack? Blake Christian? I don't know. He was a generic white boy. I just heard the name Blake Christian, and I was like, that is the most generic white boy name I've ever heard in my life. Who is naming these people? Jesus. Tully Blanchard came out with a new team, the Gates of Agony. I didn't see that match at all. Dalton Castle, I woke up just in time to see him come back, and that was cool to see Dalton. I'm a little surprised he wasn't on the main card, but it was still cool to see him. And I will say this for Supercard of Honor, props for not overdoing it by having AEW talents just show up on the show. Like, I thought for sure Danielson and Punk were going to show on this. And it was nice that they didn't rely on it. They just kind of like, no, it's like, let's bring Ring of Honor back and let's let the action speak for itself. So we started off with Swerve Strickland taking on Alex Zane, who I'd never seen before, and I'm not overly interested in Swerve, to be perfectly honest, but I thought this was a nice athletic opener to open up the show and a nice win for Swerve, so I was okay with that. Then Tully Blanchard debuted his new client, Brian the Machine Cage. God, it's great to see him. He came out and beat the ever-living shit out of Ninja Max. I was like, all right, nice and simple. Debut him as a monster. He squashes a guy. I was cool with that. That was great. Then we got Jay Lethal versus Lee Moriarty in a match that started the main storyline of the evening, where Jay Lethal had to cheat to win, much to the disappointment of seemingly himself, Sanjay Dutt, and the ROH crowd. And it was a nice little, like, storyline character development for Lethal, where in his growing frustration, he had to cheat to beat the younger and more inexperienced guy. And I was like, all right, they're doing something with Lethal, and it would pay off by the end of the show in a great way, I thought. So this was good for setting up those stepping stones to get to the main event. The women's title match was absolutely horrible. Mercedes Martinez defeating Willow Nightingale to determine the interim ROH women's title. The current title is held by Deonna Purrazzo and now we're going to have a unification match between Mercedes and Deonna. But this match was so bad, like really sloppy all around. And I thought Willow legitimately knocked the wind out of Mercedes on that moonsault. It looked like she did, because it looked like things kind of got thrown out of whack there. It was this was not good, like not good at all. And yeah, I've seen Willow a couple of times. Didn't really have a strong opinion of her. She kind of looks like a Steven Universe character come to life, which a little off-putting to me. I have never seen Steven Universe, but I know people who are fans of that show, and again, I'm not impressed. So anything that reminds me of it, I kind of was like, no more, please. But even without all that baggage, I thought this match was terrible, arguably the worst match of the weekend. But then we got my favorite match of the weekend. FTR defeating the Briscoe brothers to become the new ROH Tag Team Champions. This was awesome. I loved it. This match was tag team excellence from start to finish. Possibly the best match I've ever seen the Briscoes have, because they're usually chaotic spot guys, and there's a little bit of that going on here. But I think FTR's inclusion helped them to be a little bit more grounded in their tag team approach and made for a much better match. It was a brawl. It was had classical wrestling in it. You got a little bit of high flying. It had a little bit of everything, and it was exemplified many of the things that I love and admire about tag team wrestling. I can't put this match over enough. I thought it was absolutely fantastic, and I loved it. Just about every second of it. And the Briscoes are absolutely crazy for going double duty and working this show, which I thought this match was going to be early in the card, like possibly the first match, which would have killed the show, to be perfectly honest. I thought that they were going to go super early, and because they were also working the Impact show. So I imagined that they were going to be like first or second on this show and then immediately head on over to the Impact show. But they were close to the main event. Not quite the main event, but close to it. And it was, I mean, they were right smack dab in the middle of the show, it looks like. And it was excellent match, but man, Briscoes really stretched themselves far with with that one. But yeah, then you got the bit with the Bucks after that was over, where they attacked the Briscoes and built into their match with FTR on Dynamite this week. And that match will now be for the Ring of Honor World title, so we'll see how all that goes. Very interesting, very exciting. But this tag match I thought was superb and was easily my favorite match of the weekend. And that includes some matches from WrestleMania that I really enjoyed, like Cody and Seth and Edge and AJ. Then we got a match that I also enjoyed, short but sweet, but Minoru Suzuki defeated Rhett Titus to become the new Ring of Honor television champion. Now, I think Ring of Honor probably has too many belts. You don't need a TV title and the pure title. I think you could probably drop one of those, especially since their roster's kind of in flux. Although now that Ring of Honor and AEW are owned by the same guy, they can move a couple AEW guys over to Ring of Honor, because AEW's roster is way too fucking big. But treat Ring of Honor like your OVW, and I think you'll be fine. But yeah, I thought the match was good. It was a nice, hard-hitting match, and my boy Suzuki won a belt. That was pretty cool. I'm always going to mark out for Suzuki. Then we got a match that wasn't very good. For the pure title, Wheeler Yuta winning the belt over Josh Woods in what I thought was a very dull, very boring match. And I've said it before, I like the pure title. I like the rules that go hand in hand with the pure title. But these two did not, they just couldn't make it work on this night. It was just a very dry, very boring match that was forgotten almost instantly after I saw it. So, and I thought maybe this match would be really good, because one of my criticisms on the card is that some of it looked like an AEW dark card, which is what I thought about Lethal and Moriarty, but that match succeeded in giving us like stepping stones for an interesting storyline with Lethal. This one did no such thing. It was just like they just did the match, traded holds, and that was it. It was a very dull, boring match, I thought. Then we had the main event, winner takes all, to determine the undisputed Ring of Honor World Champion, which I guess is a match they had to have given the situation with the Ring of Honor title, with Gresham and Bandito both laying claim to being the true champion. This does not look like a main event to me on paper. I think when I did my preview, I made the comment that maybe the tag match should main event, although there was no way that could have happened given that the Briscoes were pulling double duty. But Yeah, I thought the match itself was good. I thought it was a solid match. I liked that Chavo Guerrero, who was in Bandito's corner, cheated, and Bandito called him out because he wanted a pure, clean match. And I was like, that's interesting. I don't think I've ever seen that before. And ultimately, Jonathan Gresham got the win and got challenged by Jay Lethal immediately afterwards, and immediately got beaten up by Lethal and Sanjay Dutt, who revealed to be on Jay Lethal's side as they've joined forces to kind of lead Lethal towards the Ring of Honor title. But then that, of course, led us to our big surprise of the evening, where Samoa Joe has returned to Ring of Honor and revealed himself to be All Elite. So Samoa Joe will be showing up in All Elite Wrestling this Wednesday, and we'll have to see how well that goes. I made my feelings clear on Joe. I think he's diminished. I think he's past his prime, and he's not that interesting to me anymore. But it did feel right to have Joe in Ring of Honor. He is the greatest Ring of Honor champion of all time, so it was great to see him there on the return of Ring of Honor. And it felt right, and it was a legitimate, nice surprise, and it got a pop. And I was like, okay, on the night it worked. I don't know what Joe can offer moving forward, but on the one night it was a great ending to the show, so I'll give it that. So, yeah, a couple duds on this show, but overall I thought Supercard of Honor was really good, and that tag match was chef's kiss worthy. Fantastic match. I loved it. Yeah, I'm catching up on comments right now. It's been a long time since I was in your live chats, Patrick. Last time I was a wee lad. Now I'm in college. Time flies. Hey, when I started this channel, I was in my, let's see, how old? 12 years? I'm 37 now. I was 25. I was in my mid-20s when I started this channel. So it's like, you want to talk about, in that time, you know, I've become a homeowner. I've bought a car. I've gone through multiple cell phones. It's like, it's amazing, like, how far the time flies. Okay, so Blake Christian was in the Ultimate X match. Yeah, that moonsault on the women's match looked horrible. Is it true that Vince finally won a match at WrestleMania? Yes, he did. Yes, he did. He absolutely did. Alrighty, so now we've got the last show. I'll be talking about the Impact Wrestling Multiverse of Madness card. And I looked at the concept for the show where it's like we're going to mix together all these different talents from different companies like New Japan, Ring of Honor. I think there was AAA was represented at one point. Pro Wrestling Noah was represented. It's like, yeah, we're going to mix and match all these talents together. I'm like, that's pretty cool. It's a cool concept, and they created some interesting pairings out of it. So it's like, let's see the show. And the show itself, production-wise, looked like an indie show through and through. The venue was small. Camera work was not the greatest. It looked like a small-time show. But I kind of expected that. So I went into this show with kind of lowered expectations and just wanted to have a nice, fun night of action. And I felt the show delivered that. It was exactly what it promoted and exactly what it needed to be. So I was okay with it. Opening match, I did not care for. It was the Ultimate X match for the X Division Championship with Trey Miguel successfully defending against Chris Bay, Jordan Grace, Rich Swann, Vince Marcellia. I refuse to call him just Vincent because that just reminds me of Virgil. And Blake Christian subbing for Willie Mack. Bland as fuck Blake Christian. That should be his title. That should be his surname or his title. Just fucking bland as fuck Blake Christian. But yeah, you know, the Ultimate X, I've talked about it before. It's a gimmick that's been done to death. This company has driven that concept into the ground. They've done over 45 of these matches. It's dead. 45, this is supposedly their key gimmick match here. And they've done 45 of them in less than 20 years. That's more than 2 a year. That's ridiculous to me. And so it's like, whatever, it's just another spot fest. I guess the only thing that was interesting about this match was seeing Jordan Grace hanging off of it, but other than that, it was a dull, you know, kind of been there, done that type of match. And we didn't even get a title change out of it, so it was what it was. Next up was something that I actually really enjoyed. Mickie James and Nick Aldis versus Chelsea Green and Matt Cardona in a mixed tag team match. This was fun. Nice showcase for the two married couples, and they did their little double team spots and everything. And that was enjoyable. So that one I got a kick out of. It's great to see. It's always good to see Mickie James and Chelsea Green for multiple reasons. But it's a bunch of people I respect, a bunch of people who are doing well, and they were able to come together and have a nice match out of it. So this was fun. We also got to see Alex Shelley have a match against Speedball Mike Bailey, who I don't think I've ever seen before this show. And it's nice to see Shelley doing well and still performing at a fairly high level. I thought the match itself was pretty good. And Shelley didn't get the win, obviously. But it was, Shelley's one of those guys that I felt TNA really dropped the ball with. I felt there was potential with him to become their version of Chris Jericho. And they never really developed him into that. And I think it's a shame because I think there was gold to mine there, and they never really took full advantage of it. But I thought this match was pretty good. It's nice to see Alex Shelley still a good worker after all these years. Next up was yet another four-way tag. It's like, how many of these were there this weekend? This one for the Knockouts Tag Team Championship. I cannot believe they brought those belts back. But the champions, the Influence, Madison Rayne and Tennille Dashwood, successfully defended against Tasha Steelz and Savannah Evans. Giselle Shaw, who I've never seen before, but she's pretty cute, not going to lie. And her partner, Lady Frost. And Decay, Havoc, and Rosemary. This match did not stand out to me. It was just a bunch of people doing spots and nothing stood out. And the champions retained, so yada, 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 whatever. It was what it was. So, anyway, moving on. We got Tomohiro Ishii going up against Eddie Edwards. This was fun. This was a nice, hard-hitting match with the two guys headbutting the fuck out of each other, which is what you expect out of an Ishii match. Good stuff. I enjoyed it. Ishii got the win, which surprised me. I thought maybe Eddie Edwards would get the win in an American show, but no, they gave it to Ishii, and it was a solid match. I enjoyed it, so that was fun. Next up was one of my more favorite matches on the show, Josh Alexander and Jonah, who I don't think I've ever seen before, taking on Moose and PCO. This was a nice bulls in a china shop type of match, where it's like you had PCO and Moose, who were like these big brawler types, going up against Jonah, who's thick as fuck, and it's nice to see athletic fat guys in wrestling again. And Josh Alexander being the small man in the match, but kind of the incredible athlete to kind of add a little bit more to it. I thought this match was fun to watch, and I thought it was an enjoyable tag match. I enjoyed it more than I thought I would. And again, I like watching big guys kind of knock each other around, and this match gave me that. It's like good for PCO, like still kind of mining some gold out of this gimmick change that he's been on for the last few years. And Jonah, I got a good first impression out of him. So good was had all around. Good fun was had all around. Next up was the Deonna Purrazzo Open Challenge, where her mystery opponent was revealed to be Fabi Apache, who the crowd clearly had no idea who she was. This was for the AAA Reina de Reinas Championship, which Deonna currently holds. She got the win after a fairly uneventful match, but Taya Valkyrie came back and immediately challenged Deonna Purrazzo and made her intentions known to go for the AAA title. Wish they had just done Deonna and Taya on this card. That would have been a better match. But it was what it was. Nice to see Taya back, if nothing else. And then we got a very cool pairing in Chris Sabin taking on Switchblade Jay White. Very nice match where Chris White... keep screwing their names up. Chris Sabin got the win, which surprised the holy hell out of me. I thought for sure Switchblade was going to win this. But in any case, I thought the match was pretty good. It was probably the most unique pairing on the card. When you pitched it to me, when I looked at the card before the show started, I'm like, that could be pretty good. And like that's a pairing you don't really think about. But overall, it was a pretty good match and one of the bigger highlights on the show. And then we got the main event, the Good Brothers defeating the Briscoe Brothers, who looked tired as fuck after working the match that they worked on the previous show against FTR. I mean, they poured everything they had into that FTR match, and this one they looked exhausted. And the Good Brothers got the win here, so Briscoes take 2 losses on this night. And it was not a bad match. It was just kind of an okay one. And again, the Briscoes looked tired after that barn burner they had with FTR. So I feel like this match only main evented just to give the Briscoe brothers enough time to get to the show on time. And that was the main reason for doing it. But it was not the most exciting match on the show and not the most exciting match to close on. I think I probably would have closed on either, for star power reasons, the mixed tag, or Chris Sabin and Jay White, or maybe even the Moose tag match, since it has the Impact World Champion in it. Those probably would have been better options to close. But again, I think that they closed on Good Brothers versus Briscoes because they wanted to give the Briscoes enough time to actually get to the show on time. But yeah, overall, I thought multiverse of matches, I thought it was fine. I thought it was an enjoyable show overall. Didn't hate it. And it gave me pretty much exactly what I wanted out of it. So there is that. So now that I've said this, let's check the poll results. All right. Oh, wow. This is pretty evenly dispersed for the most part. All right. So we actually have a tie. Donald Trump at WrestleMania 23 was last at 25%. Vince McMahon and Linda McMahon tied for 37% each. So we actually have a tie in the poll there. So that's interesting. But yeah, so I think I've gotten through everything I need to get through. Took about an hour and a half, which is normal for some of my live streams. I have a tendency to ramble and to cram a bunch of shit in there. But how's everybody feeling? How's everybody doing? You sticking with me through this really long thing? What did you think of Supercard of Honor and Multiverse of Madness and Stand and Deliver? What were your opinions on the shows? Jonah was Bronson Reed in NXT. I did not make that connect. I completely forgot about Bronson Reed until you mentioned it, to be honest with you. You're making short films. Oh, that's great. That's awesome, man. Chris Sabin is still wrestling. Yeah, he is, and he still looks like Chris Sabin. He doesn't look like he's slowed down at all. And yeah, so I guess I'll wrap it up. I've talked about pretty much everything I want to talk about, unless you have some, anybody in the chat has last minute questions for me before I head out. Any questions before I go? Going once, going twice. All right, I think I'm going to close up shop here. I think we're good. Quick reminder, everybody, I am back on Twitter. I have not posted any tweets. I have not tweeted anything yet, but I will use the Twitter to promote anytime I'm here on YouTube or posting videos or working on a video. And I will also be using it to comment on various wrestling shows, in addition to promoting my book, especially as we get closer to publication. So I've got a lot. Got a lot going on in my life, and it's kind of crazy, but man, oh man, it's like I'm back on Twitter. That's great. Wonderful. But yeah, thanks again, everybody. Hopefully you all had a great WrestleMania weekend, but I am done for tonight. Thank you again, everybody, for watching, and I will see you all later.